Is one solution to the problem of teens causing disturbances on the Country Club Plaza to extend a 9 p.m. summer curfew ordinance year-round. A proposal at City Hall to do just that led to a blunt discussion about race this week, with one City Councilman, Jermaine Reed, pointing out that all of the tickets that have so far been issued by police been slapped on black teenagers.
All 34 of those tickets that were issued were black. All 34. And so I'm concerned that we will make this into a race issue, that we're targeting African-American young people in our communities.
There is, in fact, a racial issue in this city. What I argue with is the immediate and inescapable implication that because 34 tickets were issued, and they were issued to African Americans, that that's somehow nefarious or racist. Because one of the, that's the implication, that's the implication that you left.
Mr. Mayor. I didn't cut you off.
I thought you had finished.
And I wasn't going to
apologize.
cut you off, but please continue.
Go ahead. That's the implication that was left, and I think that was the implication that was meant.
Now, the argument was persuasive enough to get the council to back off passing this 9 p.m. year-round curfew. At least for now, they tabled the idea until the end of May. But is there evidence that white kids are also breaking the current curfew law and are simply not being ticketed, Eric Wesson?
Probably. It's just an interesting conversation. A duck is a duck. And you can call it a chicken, you can call it whatever but a duck. And you have some racial issues there. And for Sly or the Mayor James to say that it's not a race issue, it is a race issue, but let's not call it a race issue, is very confusing, and it eliminates the real issue there. You have white police officers on the plaza giving tickets to black youth when I know that there are white youth there past the curfew as well.
Is there any evidence, Stacey?
Oh, I haven't seen it. If the 34 tickets have been written to 34 black youth, then that's the facts of the matter. I mean, let's not forget we have an African-American mayor, an African-American chief of police who wants those officers down there, quelling any type of disturbance that we have. I agree with what Councilman Brooks says in the sense that there are people who don't feel comfortable down there. No teen should feel comfortable down there, or kid who's under the age of 12 or 13. This is an issue of parents who are allowing their children to go down there. If those are African-American children, then they should be cited. If there are white kids down there, then they should be cited as well. But there isn't any evidence that any of the disturbances at this point are being caused by anyone other than the kids who were being cited, period. Bravo to the mayor for trying to quell this and saying it's not a race issue. Don't pull the race card. And this, it's a problem, but it isn't based on black and white. It's based on kids.
Eric.
There are citations being issued to kids that are standing out in front of the movie theater waiting on their parents to come and pick them up. And because there's 2 or 3 of them, they're getting citations for that. They're not creating a disturbance. They're just standing there waiting on their parents to come and pick them up. And it's like maybe, I think one lady's ticket was at 5 minutes after 11.
It doesn't matter, though. The law says if you are a kid under the age of 18 down on the plaza or any of these entertainment districts after 9 o'clock, you're in violation of the law. The parents know this. So the parent either needs to be there before 9 to accompany their child or face the consequences, period.
Now, the question really is, though, is if there were to be a curfew year-round and at 9 p.m., would it really have an impact on fixing what has been a perennial issue that we've talked about repeatedly on this program, Dave?
I'd say, Nick, a couple of things. The discussion about how the curfew is enforced suggests the problems with curfews, because what curfews do is criminalize not behavior, but just existence. If you're on the street, no matter what you're doing, you are violating the law. There are very few laws like that in our community, and yet it criminalizes people of a certain age for doing something that, say, Eric or I or any of the people around this table could do. So it almost certainly will be unfairly enforced, because you can't arrest every teenager who is out past curfew everywhere in the city. In fact, the police will tell you that they can't go to every community, every neighborhood. They don't have enough police officers to do that. So there is an inherent unfairness in curfews that make it difficult for the police, which is why, frankly, the police don't like them as much as some politicians.
Steve.
You know, what's remarkable to me about this discussion is here we are again having this conversation. How many years, Nick, have you led a conversation about this exact topic here at this table, in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, the good news is that there's a recognition that the problem continues and that there's going to be a move to expand summer hours at community centers, the number of community centers, the number of weekends those centers are going to be available from 8 to 12. That's a positive step. I suggest it's probably not going to be enough, and that this summer we're going to continue to have this conversation at this table.